We're about to dive in to one of the most profound spiritual dialogues ever recorded. It's a conversation between a seeker, a man named Uddhava, and his divine guide, Krishna. You can think of it as a timeless masterclass on finding ultimate truth, and it all kicks off with one single, urgent question. This is the exact question Uddhava asks Krishna. You can almost feel his frustration, right? He's looking around and seeing all these spiritual teachers, all these knowers of Brahman, and they're all offering different advice, different paths to the ultimate good. So he's wondering, do they all lead to the same place? Or is one better than the others? It's a question that feels so current. It could have been typed into a search engine just this morning. And Krishna's answer is, well, it's just brilliant. He says that before you can even begin to find the one true path, you have to understand why so many different paths even exist in the first place. So let's start right there.
Okay, so let's trace this all the way back to the beginning. Krishna explains that originally there was just one source of wisdom, himself. He passed the sacred knowledge to Brahma, the creator. Brahma then passed it to his son, who passed it to the great sages, and on it went. The knowledge just flowed down through the generations, spreading from gods to sages to us humans. But with each new audience, something started to shift.
And here it is, the key insight. The paths started multiplying because people are different. Krishna explains that our personalities are all shaped by what he calls the modes of nature. These are our innate tendencies, towards things like passion or goodness or even ignorance. And depending on which mode is dominant in your character, you're going to naturally see and chase after wisdom in a completely different way.
And this, right here, is the result. Because we're all wired so differently, we end up chasing this whole menu of different goals. Some people seek religious piety. Others are running after fame or power. Some think wealth is the answer, while others go the opposite route and practice extreme self-denial. And everyone is convinced their path is the right one. But take a look at the chart. Notice how one of these paths stands totally apart from the others.
But this is where Krishna delivers a really stark warning about all those worldly goals. He says any destination you reach through your own actions, your karma, is temporary by its very nature. It has a beginning and it has an end. These paths, they might give you some fleeting, petty pleasures, but because they're all rooted in a fundamental ignorance of who we truly are, they're absolutely guaranteed to end in sorrow. So if all those other paths are ultimately just dead ends, what's the real answer? This brings us to the absolute heart of Krishna's teaching, a path that rises above all the others. He calls it Bhakti Yoga, the path of pure, unadulterated devotion. So what exactly is Bhakti Yoga? It's not about complicated rituals or heady intellectual debates. It's direct. It's the simple yet profound process of letting go of every single worldly attachment and just allowing your mind to become completely and utterly absorbed in the divine. And get this, the totality of this devotion is just staggering. A person on this path, they don't want heavenly rewards, they don't want supernatural powers, they don't even desire their own liberation from the cycle of birth and death. The only thing they want is that pure, loving connection with the divine itself. Nothing else matters. And what's so incredible is that this love isn't a one-way street. In one of the most intimate moments in the entire text, Krishna tells his devotee that they're more dear to him than the greatest of gods, more dear than his own divine family, and then, astonishingly, even more dear to him than his own self. This just reveals the deeply personal, reciprocal relationship at the very core of this path. Krishna then uses this really powerful metaphor to explain how devotion actually works. He says, just like a blazing fire turns a pile of firewood into nothing but ash, that same kind of intense devotion, when it's directed at the divine, completely burns away all the baggage from our past actions, all our sins. It's like a total spiritual purification by fire. And here it is, the final, unambiguous verdict. Krishna lays it all on the line. He says that no other spiritual practice, not traditional yoga, not deep intellectual study, not extreme self-denial, nothing can win him over or satisfy him like pure, intense devotion. He places it at the absolute pinnacle. Okay, so now that the why is firmly established, the conversation takes a very practical turn. Uddhava, playing the role of the perfect student, now asks for the how. How does a person actually do this? He's essentially asking for a step-by-step guide. He wants to know the specific form, the specific qualities. What exactly should a seeker focus on when they sit down to meditate? It's a request for a clear, actionable technique, the how-to manual. And Krishna delivers, laying out this really clear, structured method. It starts with the physical body. Sit comfortably, keep your body straight. Next, use breath control to calm the mind and purify your energy. Then, the real inner work begins. You vibrate the sacred sound Om inside your heart, and you visualize a beautiful lotus flower opening up right there. Finally, at the very center of that lotus, you focus your mind on his divine form. And he doesn't just leave this form up to your imagination. Oh no. He gives these incredibly specific, beautiful details to help focus the mind. A peaceful, smiling face, 4 graceful arms holding his symbolic instruments, a complexion as dark as a rain cloud, dressed in shining gold. Every single detail is designed to be beautiful, to be captivating, to be pleasing to the heart. This isn't some abstract concept. It's a living, breathing image for the mind to embrace. So you follow these steps. Where does this practice actually lead? What's the end goal? Well, it all culminates in a profound transformation of perception, what the text describes as the ultimate inner vision.
Krishna describes this fascinating progression, a journey that goes deeper and deeper inward. You start by fixing your mind on just one part of that beautiful form, say the smiling face. Once your mind is totally stable there, you let go of the form itself and fix your attention on the formless space, the ether around it. And in the final stage, you abandon even that focus and you ascend directly into the divine presence, thinking of absolutely nothing else. It's a journey from the concrete to the absolute. And this right here, this is the culmination. This is the entire goal of the practice. With the mind fully and completely absorbed, that illusion of being a separate, isolated self just dissolves. The seeker sees the divine within them, and they see themselves within the divine. They realize their unity with the soul of all beings, becoming one with the ultimate reality, what Krishna calls the light of all lights. So this ancient dialogue, it really leaves us with a powerful modern question, doesn't it? The path Krishna describes is all about moving from worldly distraction to intense, singular focus, all to achieve a state of unity. So it really makes you wonder, if that kind of focus can dissolve the ultimate illusion, the illusion that we're separate from everything else, what are the smaller distractions in our own lives that are preventing us from connecting with our own deeper truth?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are really getting into a monumental conversation today. It's sourced from these ancient texts, and it just cuts straight to the heart of, well, a lot of spiritual confusion, I think.
It really does. For, millennia, seekers have been grappling with this really fundamental question. If there's supposed to be one ultimate truth, one supreme good, the Shriyasi, why do the most knowledgeable people, the Brahmavadina, offer so many different paths? Sometimes they even seem to clash, right?
Exactly. And that initial challenge, it actually comes from Uddhava in our source text. He's the ultimate student, asking the Supreme Speaker directly. He's basically saying, look, are all these paths just different opinions? Is it just a case of Vikalpa Pradanyam, like a dominance of differing views?
Or he asks, is there a single core conclusion? An ekamakyata. That's the crux of it. And we're using this text as our guide to unpack that very question.
So our mission today, it's pretty profound. We're going to first trace where all this spiritual diversity comes from. How did one single pure message get sort of fractured?
Yeah, fractured by the very nature of the people who received it. That's key. And then we pivot to what becomes the main focus of this whole dialogue, this pretty revolutionary idea that one path, bhakti yoga, which is intense, unattached devotional service, is actually superior to all the others.
And it provides a kind of happiness that's totally independent of, worldly success or failure.
Completely independent. And importantly, it's not just philosophy we're getting.
No, definitely not. We're getting a really technical, step-by-step guide for intense inner meditation, dhyana yoga. It's presented as the final practical tool for someone really dedicated to bhakti.
Right. So the core message we need to really absorb is that devotion, if it's sincere, it actually transcends all the other methods. Yoga, saksha, austerity, renunciation, you name it.
Okay, let's dive straight into the source then and start unpacking this.
All right. So to tackle Uddhava's question about why there are so many paths, the Supreme Speaker starts right at the beginning, cosmologically speaking, the ultimate origin point. He explains that the original knowledge, what's known as the Vedas, or Veda Saganita, Well, it was actually lost during the Great Cosmic Annihilation, the Prelay.
Whoa, hang on. Prelay, we're talking like total universal destruction and recreation, aren't we? Not just some dark age, but a full-on reset.
That's exactly it. A cosmic reset. Everything, the entire universe, including all the collective memory, all the recorded knowledge, it all gets absorbed back into the source.
Wow.
So for this knowledge to even exist again in the new creation cycle, it had to be retaught directly by the divine source itself.
Okay, so at its absolute origin, in this current cycle, the knowledge is singular. It's pure.
Absolutely. The Supreme Speaker says he first instructed this knowledge to Brahma, the very first created being in the universe. And the core principle, the Dharma, it was unambiguous. It was always understood as being centered upon me, Madhyamaka.
Madhyamaka, centered upon the speaker. That establishes the unity right there at the start.
Precisely. A single unified teaching.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Pure knowledge, pure recipient, Brahma. But obviously the fragmentation happens somewhere down the line as this knowledge moves away from the source. Where does it go next?
Well, the text lays out this really ancient, detailed transmission chain. It shows how the knowledge literally traveled down through different levels of existence. So Brahma first passes it to his son, Manu, the forefather, Purvajaya.
Manu, okay.
From Manu, it descends to the 7 great sages, like Brigu and others, the Udayo. These are like the great intellectual custodians of the universe.
And then from just those 7 sages, the knowledge just explodes outwards. It goes to practically every type of living being you can imagine. The list in the text it's huge. It really shows the scale of this distribution.
It really is extensive. You've got demigods, the devas, you've got demons, the danavas, humans, obviously, Manu. Then the perfected spiritual beings, siddhas, celestial singers, gandharvas, intellectual beings like the Vidyadhar.
But it doesn't stop there,
Right.
It goes even further.
No, it keeps going. To more, let's say, esoteric beings. Kindevas, Kinnaras, the Nagas, serpent beings, Arakas, and even those often hidden beings, the Yakas or Guhyaka.
It's like a complete cosmic census. What's the point of listing all these different groups? It seems so detailed.
Well, that list is the crucial setup for the answer to Uddhava's question. The reason for the fragmentation isn't some flaw in the original message. It's an inevitable consequence based on the nature of all these different recipients.
Oh.
The text states it explicitly. These diverse beings, from the highest demigod right down to the lowest Kimpuru, they all possess many natures, Bhavyapratya.
Many natures.
Yeah.
And those natures, crucially, are born of the modes of passion, goodness, and ignorance. Ragasa Fatamo Huva. Okay, that's the core mechanism. That's the metaphysical engine driving the fragmentation.
Exactly. That's the absolute core reason for all the diversity. Because of this inherent diversity of nature, this Prakti Vaisitra, their opinions, their mateya, inevitably become divided. So a being who's predominantly in the mode of goodness, they'll look at the ultimate truth and see it primarily as, say, self-control and acquiring knowledge.
Well, someone driven by passion might see it as, what? Righteous action, building things, gaining status.
Precisely. Or accumulating wealth. The original message refracts, like light through different prisms. Each nature emphasizes a different aspect.
But wait a second. Doesn't that make truth seem really subjective? If my basic nature, governed by these modes, dictates how I even interpret the pure original knowledge, how can we trust any path, even the one being recommended here?
That is the fundamental challenge, isn't it? The Supreme Speaker is acknowledging right up front that the interpretation gets colored by the receiver. The original knowledge, the Madhyamaka, is one, but the modes of nature cause people to latch onto different facets of it as if that facet is the whole picture.
Okay.
So someone in goodness might stick closely to tradition, paramparina. They focus on ethics, good conduct, seeing that as the ultimate good.
While others, maybe further down the spectrum of the modes, might end up embracing what the sources call heretical views, the Pakantmataya.
Exactly. And Pakranch here doesn't necessarily mean evil in the way we might think. It means a view that deviates from that central unifying principle. They might focus intensely on just one aspect, maybe extreme asceticism or maybe pure materialism, and they mistake that part for the whole thing.
And this inherent confusion or bewilderment, it's actually powered by an external force too, isn't it? Illusory energy, which the text calls Matmaya Mohitadya. Their intelligence is clouded.
Correct. Their intelligence is literally Likya Mohita, bewildered by the Lord's own illusory energy Maya. And because their intelligence is clouded, they describe the ultimate good, the Shreya, in many different ways, Anakamta.
Anekanta, many different ends or conclusions.
Yeah. Their personal definition of success or the ultimate goal, it ends up depending entirely on two things: their past actions, their yatha karma, and their current inclinations, their yatha ruchi. What they like, basically.
Okay, let's dig into some of these temporary goals they end up chasing. The source gives this incredibly comprehensive list. It seems to cover the whole spectrum of what people and even celestial beings might strive for. It's what, 14 different things?
Yeah, it's quite a list. We probably can't go through all 14 right now, but we can definitely group them to see the pattern.
Good idea. How would you group them?
We could maybe think of them in three rough categories. First, things related to moral or religious achievement. Second, focusing on inner virtue. And third, the more obvious material pursuits.
Okay, let's take that first category. Things like prioritizing dharma religion or duty or yajna, sacrifice. Now these sound pretty noble, right? Duty, sacrifice, aren't those considered high forms of action? Why would they be listed as temporary goals?
They are noble actions, but the key is the goal behind them. If the aim is the result of the duty or the sacrifice, maybe getting to a heavenly planet or achieving a certain status, or even just fulfilling an obligation to get a reward, then that result itself is, by definition, finite. It's produced by action, karma, so it has a beginning and an end.
I see. It's still transactional. It's an intermediate step that gets mistaken for the final destination.
Exactly. Which contrasts sharply with the second category, the goals focused on inner virtue. Things like satya, truthfulness, dhamma, self-control, or smam, tranquility. Now, I can totally see why someone might think achieving perfect tranquility is the ultimate state.
Right? Sounds pretty good.
They're wonderful qualities, absolutely essential on the path. But again, if that tranquility is achieved through really strenuous personal effort, if it's pursued just for one's own isolated peace or satisfaction, it's still dependent.
Dependent on what?
Dependent on maintaining that perfect self-control, maintaining that effort. The sources argue that the truly lasting satisfaction, the real yurias, has to be independent of both your external circumstances and your internal effort. It has to come from somewhere else.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. And then we get to the third category, the more obviously worldly goals. Yasha, fame, kama, sense enjoyment, svartham, purely personal interest, and aizariam, opulence, wealth, power. These seem clearly driven by the motive passion, Rajas.
Definitely. And this is where that anekanta, the many different conclusions, becomes really obvious. You see one person spending their entire life chasing wealth and fame, absolutely convinced this is the highest good.
While someone else might spend their life in really deep austerity, tapa, or practice extreme renunciation, tyaga, and be just as convinced that that is the highest good.
Right. The critical point the text is making here is that all these pursuits, whether they seem virtuous like duty or obviously materialistic like fame, are ultimately rooted in a temporary changing inclination, rusi, and therefore they inevitably lead to temporary results.
Okay, that realization that all these different goals people chase are ultimately temporary, that leads us straight into the next section. And here the text delivers this really powerful, almost stark warning about anything that comes from action, from karma. The Supreme Speaker really doesn't mince words about the shelf life of any success based on effort.
No, he doesn't. This is one of the most sobering parts of the discussion. He states completely unequivocally that all worlds produced by karma, karma vinamita, anything you achieve through your actions, they are explicitly stated to have a beginning and an end at the end.
Beginning and end. That's a universal law then. Anything you build with material effort, whether it's a physical house, a reputation, maybe even achieving a higher planetary realm through good deeds, it's absolutely guaranteed to decay and eventually end.
It's the ultimate spiritual expiry date, basically. And the sources are very clear about the quality of the experience you get in these worlds, even if they might seem like paradise at first glance.
Yeah, what does it say about that?
They're described as being fundamentally based in ignorance, tamaniha, rooted in the mode of ignorance, or at least in the illusion that material things are permanent. And because of that, the result is only petty pleasures, kudrananda.
Kudrananda. Petty pleasures. That phrase really hits home. It emphasizes how fleeting and just, small-scale the joy is that comes from anything transactional or material.
Exactly. It's like, finding a $20 bill on the street. It gives you a little rush, sure, but it's not fundamentally changing your life, and it's gone pretty quickly.
Yeah, we see that all the time, don't we? The intense excitement from a big purchase or getting that promotion or even a sports team winning a championship. It feels huge in the moment, but it's sharp, and then it just dissipates. It leaves a kind of void.
Precisely. And the sources nail the inevitable consequence right there. These pursuits ultimately result in sorrow and lamentation, dukkha. The joy itself is inherently infected with the certainty of its future loss.
How so?
Well, if your happiness depends entirely on something that has a beginning and an end, adantavanta, then the very moment you start enjoying it, you simultaneously start the process of fearing its loss, which guarantees future sorrow, shukarpata.
Wow. Okay. So the goal can't be an achievement. It can't be reaching a certain world or status. It has to be a state of being that's completely independent of action and result, which is where we shift, right? To the joy of complete detachment.
Yes, and the shift is radical. The focus flips entirely. Now, it's all about the happiness experienced by the individual who is nirvikasya sarvata. That means completely unattached, completely free from dependence in every single way.
How is that achieved?
Through surrendering the self, or patapana, giving oneself over completely.
And the source of that kind of joy, where does it come from, if not from effort or results?
It's described as joy given directly by the Supreme Self, Mayatmana Sukhayat. It's an inherent non-transactional bliss. It's not earned, it's revealed when the attachments are removed. And the text draws a very firm line here, separating this inherent bliss from the condition of the person chasing sense pleasure. It states this joy is totally unattainable by those absorbed in sense objects, Vyatmanam.
Vyatmanam, those whose very self is invested in sense objects.
Right. You can't be focused outward on the temporary world and focus inward on the eternal source at the same time. It's one or the other.
It sounds like a complete internal reorientation, moving away from the constant stress of trying to achieve and maintain towards an effortless state of perfect balance, perfect equanimity.
And the resulting state for the devotee is described as one of profound peace. For the person who is peaceful, shantasya, self-controlled, dantasya, and perfectly equipoised, samatadasa, meaning their mind is steady and satisfied solely in the supreme state. The incredible result is that all directions become filled with happiness, sarva sukhamaya dish.
Wait, all directions filled with happiness? What does that mean practically? The world doesn't suddenly change, does it?
No, the external world remains as it is, but their perception is so fundamentally purified by this internal satisfaction that everything they encounter is seen through that lens. There's no external threat to their inner peace because their happiness isn't derived from anything external anymore.
Okay, I think I get it. The happiness is internal, so the external just washes over them differently.
Exactly. And the depth of this dedication, this surrender, is really driven home by what the devotee rejects. The fully surrendered soul desires absolutely nothing apart from the Supreme. The Source gives us the specific inventory of power, status, and even spiritual attainments that such a soul explicitly turns down. It really highlights what true spiritual ambition looks like in this context.
Yeah, let's go through that list. It's pretty eye-opening. They desire neither the post of Brahmael, that's the cosmic creator, the engineer of the universe.
The highest position within the material creation. Rejected. Nor the throne of Indra, Mahendraticha, the king of the heavenly planets, ruler of the demigods. Also rejected.
And then on the more earthly or universal scale, they reject Sarvahama, universal sovereignty over the whole earth, and even Razadapakyam, lordship over the lower planetary realms. Rejected. But here's the part that always gets me, especially for someone genuinely on a spiritual path. They reject the 8 great mystic perfections, the Yoga Siddhi.
Right. Rejecting the city's the power to become tiny or huge, fly through the air, control others' minds, create things at will, that's crucial. Many spiritual seekers might spend lifetimes trying to get these powers, thinking they are the sign of ultimate advancement.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the surrendered soul, according to this text, rejects them. Why? Because power itself is still an external manifestation. It can easily become just another entanglement, another distraction from pure, unattached devotion. It's a subtle, perhaps, but still a form of material enjoyment or control.
Okay, that makes sense. It's still outward focused. But the really, really challenging one on that list, for me anyway, is rejecting liberation itself. Apunabhava. Freedom from rebirth. If the whole point of pretty much every spiritual path we ever hear about is to end the cycle of suffering and rebirth, why on earth would the fully surrendered soul turn down final release?
This is the absolute core, the revolutionary heart of the bhakti path as it's being presented here. If the ultimate goal were simply freedom from suffering, then yes, a punarbhava liberation would be the top prize, no question.
Right.
But the goal of the surrendered devotee in this understanding isn't freedom from something. It's an eternal, loving, unconditional relationship with the Supreme Person. So rejecting liberation means they actually value the continuous loving service, the ongoing relationship, more than they value their own personal comfort or even freedom from the material cycle. They desire nothing apart from me, Mad Vinayat. The relationship itself is the reward. It's not just a means to get somewhere else, like liberation. It is the destination.
Wow. Okay, the moment we establish that the real goal is the quality of the relationship itself, not just achieving some status or even freedom, well, then the whole position of the devotee changes completely, doesn't it? This next section has some of the most, frankly, startling declarations in the entire text about the unique power and the incredibly dear position of that fully surrendered person.
It really does. The Supreme Speaker looks at Uddhava, who represents this ideal devotee, and tells him he is exceptionally dear. And then he lays out this spiritual hierarchy that just completely flips conventional wisdom on its head.
Yeah, I really want to focus on this hierarchy for a moment because it's mind-blowing. The text states it explicitly. Neither Brahma, nor Siva, Shankara, nor Balarama, Sakarama, nor even my own self is as dear as you, the devotee, are.
It's an absolutely radical statement. It places the pure, unattached devotee at the very pinnacle of divine affection. Think about who's on that list. Brahma, the creator. Shiva, the destroyer, often seen as the greatest devotee himself. Balarama, the Lord's own expansion, his brother. Lakama, the goddess of fortune, his eternal consort. Even the Lord's own self, his personal identity.
None of them are as dear as the unattached devotee.
That's what it says. It's asserting that cosmic function, like Brahma and Shiva, personal divine aspects like Balarama, or even divine opulence and partnership, like Latama, cannot achieve the same level of dearness, the same intimate connection that pure, selfless, unattached devotion evokes. It elevates the quality of the heart above everything else, above status, power, function, even divine association in other forms.
But then the follow-up image. It's perhaps even more profound. The text suggests the Supreme Person actually follows this devotee around.
This is the ultimate reversal of roles, isn't it? The divine source says, I always follow Anuvrajami Anitya, the sage who is unattached, Nerapankam, peaceful, Shanta, free from enmity, Nirvara, and equal in vision, Samadarshanam. He actively seeks out and follows such a person.
But why? What reason does the Supreme give for doing that? For following the devotee?
This is the most astonishing part. He says he does it solely to be purified by the dust of his feet. Puyatyagrita subi.
To be purified? How can the source of all purity be purified?
Exactly. It's a statement meant to convey the immense, inconceivable value and potency of pure, unalloyed devotion. It suggests that the quality generated by the loving surrender of the soul, that selfless love, creates a spiritual atmosphere, a potency, so incredibly powerful and pure that it's considered purifying even to the absolute source. It tells us that pure devotion itself, the love generated in the heart of the devotee, is the highest treasure in all of existence.
So it redefines spiritual power. It's not about commanding others or controlling nature.
No. It's about the power to attract the divine through love, the power to inspire love. That's the ultimate power here.
That really reframes the whole pursuit of detachment, doesn't it? That Narpakiya, it stops being this grim exercise in self-denial and becomes the natural result of experiencing this incredibly powerful reciprocal affection.
That's a perfect way to put it. Detachment isn't the painful prerequisite you have to achieve before you can even start the relationship. It's the natural outcome, the side effect of being so deeply satisfied by the relationship itself that nothing else holds the same appeal anymore.
Okay, let's get practical, though. I mean, most people trying to follow a spiritual path, including probably everyone listening, are a long, long way from being that perfectly unattached, completely pure sage whose feet purify the universe. We struggle, right? With habits, with senses, with distractions. Does this path only work for the absolute masters?
And this is where bhakti, as presented here, shows its unique mercifulness and practicality. The text offers incredible reassurance for the, let's say, imperfect practitioner. It says, even if a devotee's senses are not fully subdued, ayita indriya, meaning they're still sometimes tempted, maybe even troubled or afflicted by sense objects, they are generally not overcome by them.
Generally not overcome. Why not?
Because of the strength of their devotion, pragalbhaya bhaktya. The sheer force and sincerity of their devotional connection acts like a shield.
Okay, now that is a huge philosophical difference from many other paths, isn't it? Paths centered maybe on strict ritual adherence or deep intellectual understanding or intense asceticism. Often those paths seem to demand near-perfect control before you can make real spiritual progress.
Exactly. They often operate on a kind of pass-fail system with discipline. But bhakti, in this description, acts as a protective force. It can prevent a complete spiritual relapse even when there are temporary struggles with the senses.
Why does it offer that protection?
Because it engages the core of the self, the emotional will, the loving intention, not just the intellect or the physical discipline. When the fundamental desire, the core intention, is fixed in loving service, minor failures in controlling the senses don't necessarily break the connection entirely. The intensity of the commitment somehow compensates for those temporary lapses.
Okay, that's very encouraging. And then we get that really potent fire analogy illustrating its cleansing power. This seems to go beyond just protection into active purification.
Yes, the comparison is incredibly vivid. Just as a blazing fire, Susamadhatya, a really well-kindled, intense fire, instantly reduces piles of firewood to ashes.
Right.
In the same way, devotion directed toward me completely burns away all sins, madvakpir dahati and asi. Sins here in asi should probably be understood less as moral transgressions and more as the accumulated material inclinations, the karmic baggage, the deep-seated desires that keep us bound.
So bhakti is presented as this super efficient spiritual cleanser. It doesn't require complex rituals or waiting for future results. The devotion itself does the purifying work, almost automatically.
That's the idea, which leads directly to the ultimate declaration, the ultimate standard. A clear, bold statement asserting bhakti's absolute supremacy over all the other established spiritual processes known at that time.
Yeah, the text is really unambiguous here.
It is. It says flat out, neither yoga, meaning the path of mystic power and control, nor Sakya philosophy, the path of analytical knowledge, discriminating matter from spirit, nor religious duties, dharma performed for results, nor scriptural study, swadhyalalam, nor austerity, tapas, nor renunciation, tega. None of these traditional respected paths can satisfy or, maybe better, attract the Supreme Person as much as intense, fervent devotion or jitapakta.
Or jitabit. Strong, powerful, intense devotion. So it's saying the spiritual quantity of the effort, like how many years you meditate or how much scripture you memorize or how much you renounce, is ultimately less important than the quality of the affection, the intensity of the love. Why? Why does this one quality trump a lifetime of intellectual or physical discipline?
Because, going back to what we discussed, the ultimate goal here is defined as relationship. All those other paths, yoga, sankhya, tapas, they tend to be goal-oriented in a different way. They aim for knowledge or power or control or freedom from something. Bhakti aims for connection with someone.
Okay.
So when the connection itself, the relationship, is the supreme value, then methods based purely on impersonal effort or knowledge acquisition naturally fall short in comparison. They don't engage the heart in the same way. And crucially, underlining its universal accessibility, the text adds that this intense devotion purifies even those born in the lowest circumstances, the Shrapakan, traditionally outcasts or dog-eaters.
Wow. So devotion is completely independent of any social status, intellectual capacity, or material qualification whatsoever.
That's the radical inclusivity being presented. The only qualification is the sincerity and intensity of the heart's longing.
Now, when this pure devotion really starts to mature, it stops being just an abstract internal feeling, right? It actually starts to manifest outwardly. The sources give this list of physical and emotional symptoms of devotion that are seen as signs of genuine purification of the heart.
Yes, the purity of the heart, the asheya, is explicitly said to be unattainable without these kinds of symptoms emerging. The emotional release, the overflow is key.
What are some of these signs?
The devotee sometimes experiences a choked voice, bhagatgata, when speaking about or remembering the divine. Their heart melts, drvatayasya. They might weep frequently, bukan, out of intense feeling, or sometimes laugh out loud, hasatikawachich.
And the one I find really poignant is the lack of self-consciousness about it all. Singing loudly and dancing without any shame, vilaja ugiati nityatika. You know, in so many spiritual traditions, emotional restraint and very measured, dignified behavior are the expected standard. But here, the expression of overwhelming spiritual joy is so intense that normal social inhibitions just fall away.
It's seen as the hallmark of uninhibited, genuine love. Those emotional channels that were maybe previously blocked by pride or fear or social conditioning or just mundane attachment, they're now fully open and flowing directly towards the divine. The spiritual equivalent of tears, laughter, song, dance, these become the natural, spontaneous ways to process that incredibly intense influx of spiritual realization and emotion.
So why does this specific process, this deep emotional engagement through hearing and chanting, work better, according to the text, than, say, purely intellectual analysis? We get that beautiful analogy of the spiritual ointment, right?
Exactly. The soul, the consciousness, is cleansed Parimiyate specifically by hearing and chanting the sacred narrations, the Matpuchagata Javahitanai, hearing about the divine, chanting the names. And the sources say this cleansing process allows the soul to finally perceive subtle reality, Vastu Sukume. Just as the physical eye can only perceive very fine, subtle objects when it's been properly anointed with clarifying ointment, Anyaja Sampriyuptam.
Ah, so in simple terms, bhakti acts like spiritual eye drops. It's not that the subtle reality isn't there, it's that our vision is clouded by the dust of material attachment, pride, and distraction. Devotion cleans the lens.
That's a great way to put it. Intellectual study, Jana, might be able to describe the subtle reality in great detail, but according to this view, it can't necessarily cleanse the instrument of perception itself, which is the heart or consciousness. Bhakti, through hearing and chanting, cleanses the instrument, allowing us to perceive the truth directly, not just intellectually.
Okay, so we firmly established that bhakti is presented as the supreme path. It offers protection, unparalleled purification through love. But Uddhava, being the ultimate student, he needs more than just philosophy. He needs a methodology. How do you do this? So the discourse shifts here, moving from the why to the how. It becomes this highly technical manual. If bhakti is the underlying intention, the fuel, then dhyana yoga, meditation, is presented as the precise tool needed to focus the mind onto the object of that devotion.
Yes, this transition is absolutely vital. Bhakti purifies the heart, gets the intention right, but the mind, as we all know, is still incredibly restless. Dhyana yoga is the prescribed method to take that purified, single-pointed intention and anchor it firmly in focused meditation. And the first step is all about mental preparation, which includes a pretty stern warning.
Right, the warning is critical. It says, contemplating sense objects inevitably leads to attachment, vyajati. That's just the mind's natural outward-going tendency, like a centrifugal force.
But in contrast, remembering the supreme leads to merging, pravilya. The mind simply follows whatever it focuses on. Focus on the temporary, you get entangled. Focus on the eternal, you merge towards it.
Therefore,
the practitioner must consciously abandon contemplation on the unreal, which is like a dream or fantasy, asada pithina, swapna manoratham. That whole world of material desires and plans, when you really obsess over it, is ultimately no more substantial than a dream you had last night or some wishful thinking.
okay, stop chasing those phantom dreams. And
Instead, one must fix the mind. But crucially, not just any mind. It has to be a mind already imbued with my nature, mad bhava vavitam.
so the devotion, the bhakti, has to come first. The mind needs to be pre-soaked in that loving remembrance before you start the technical meditation.
Exactly. It's not about starting with a blank slate mind. It's about taking a mind that's already saturated, already flavored with remembrance and the qualities of the divine, and then using dhyana yoga to stabilize that already spiritually oriented mind.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So once that mental framework is established, mind imbued with devotion, turned away from the unreal, then the text dives into these incredibly specific physical instructions. These are considered essential for the serious seeker of liberation, the mumakon.
That's right. The body has to support the mind's effort. The instruction is, the meditator should sit on an even seat, sama asana, keeping the body naturally erect, samakaya, but comfortably, yatha sukham. No straining.
And the hands.
The hands should rest calmly on the lap, utsagataya. And the gaze is very specifically directed. Fix the gaze on the tip of one's own nose, smanasagra kateng.
The tip of the nose. Why there? That seems like such a precise, maybe even slightly awkward physical detail. What's the purpose?
It's a classic yogic focal point designed to achieve a couple of things at once. First, it helps stabilize the eyes, preventing them from darting around and getting drawn to external distractions. Second, and maybe more subtly, it helps to stabilize the internal movement of breath and thought. The eyes are very closely linked to the restlessness of the mind. Fixing the gaze helps to anchor the internal focus point.
Okay, that makes sense. Stabilizing the eyes stabilizes the mind. And this stabilization leads straight into the practice of pranayama, breath control. The stated objective is to purify the pathways of the breath, the marga.
Using the standard techniques: inhalation, pura, retention, kumbhaka, and exhalation, rekaka.
And the instruction is methodical, right? Practice gradually and also in reverse order.
Yes, vipariyepi. Practicing the cycle both ways. Inhale, hold, exhale, and exhale, hold, inhale, perhaps, or simply alternating focus, ensures a balance is achieved in the subtle life energies, the pra. The goal isn't just taking deep breaths. It's about consciously using the breath as a tool to calm and harmonize the internal energies that normally keep the mind agitated.
And woven right into this breath control is the core sonic practice, vibrating the unbroken sound of Om, Okram, within the heart space.
And the visualization given for the sound is highly specific and quite beautiful. The sound should resonate like the sustained, continuous ringing of a bell, gantina.
Gantina dia, like a bell tone.
Yes. And the physical sensation or the subtle feeling of that sound rising and merging within is compared to the delicate fiber found inside a lotus stalk by Sordavat.
Wow, Baisordavat, like a lotus fiber. That suggests something incredibly thin, subtle, continuous rising upward.
Exactly. It's not a loud, forceful Om, but a subtle internal vibration practiced in coordination with the breath cycle.
So the Om is vibrated, maybe mentally or very softly, on the inhalation, held during the retention, and then gently allowed to merge back into the heart space during the exhalation. Something like that.
That's the typical practice associated with this kind of instruction. And the text gives this surprisingly practical benchmark for progress. It says that if you practice this specific breath control, incorporating the Om 10 times, 3 times a day, morning, noon, evening perhaps, then within a month, the practitioner gains control over the vital air, Jitanila. They conquer the breath.
A month. That's a very concrete timeline. It really signals that this isn't just abstract philosophy. It's presented as a measurable, repeatable technique.
It does. So with the breath now stabilized, Jintanila, and the mind already mad bhavabhavitam imbued with devotion, the yogi is finally prepared for the central visualization practice, meditating on the auspicious form of the Lord, the Dhyana Mangalam.
And this starts with that detailed visualization of the lotus within the heart, the Hutpunarikam.
That's right. First, the yogi meditates on the heart lotus as initially facing downward, which represents the closed, unawakened state of the spiritual heart. Then, through the force of meditation, the practitioner visualizes it turning upward, opening fully, Anidram becoming bright and vibrant. It's described as having 8 petals and a central pericarp, the seed pod in the middle, Sakarchakam.
So the lotus opening signifies the consciousness awakening, becoming receptive.
Precisely. And then comes this fascinating cosmic placement within that central pericarp of the open lotus. We're told to sequentially place 3 luminous entities, one above the other, the sun, then the moon above that, and finally fire above the moon.
Sun, moon, fire. Inside the heart lotus, what's the symbolic function of these 3? Why this specific sequence?
It's generally understood to symbolize stages of transcending different levels of material light and energy, moving towards pure spiritual awareness. The sun represents the intense, often harsh external light of the material world. The moon represents a cooler, more soothing, reflective, subtle light, perhaps indicating a more internalized mental focus. And fire, placed highest, represents pure, self-luminous spiritual radiance, the fire of concentrated awareness itself, which has the power to consume all impurities.
So meditating on them in sequence, sun, moon, fire, helps the mind move from focusing on gross external reality, sun, to a calmer internal balance, moon, and finally arrive at purified, focused spiritual concentration, fire.
That's a very common interpretation. And then crucially, right in the middle of that spiritual fire, one must remember and visualize the auspicious form of the Supreme Speaker himself, the Dhyana Mangalam. The description that follows is just incredibly rich, a deep dive into sacred iconography. It's designed to give the mind the maximum amount of beautiful, engaging detail to anchor onto.
Let's unpack that description. The form should be visualized as steady, peaceful, with a beautiful face, Sumkha.
Yes, and it should be long, graceful, and specifically 4-armed, Dirga Karukatur Bhujam. The 4 arms are significant, symbolizing the Lord's ability to hold the 4 primary cosmological symbols or tools, conch, disc, club, lotus, and thus perform all cosmic functions simultaneously, operating beyond the limitations of material duality.
Okay. And the details really focus on evoking serenity and divine beauty, right? A charming neck and cheeks and a pure, gentle smile. Susi Smitham.
Exactly. He's adorned with shining earrings shaped like Makara, Makara kuntum. The Makara is this mythical aquatic creature often depicted as very dynamic, suggesting the earrings aren't static but seem to flow, adding to the sense of a living, vibrant presence.
And the clothing.
Clad in golden garments, Hembabara, symbolizing divine purity, effulgence, and spiritual wealth. And his complexion is described as Ganashemam, dark like a dense monsoon cloud.
Ganashyamam. That's a very specific and common description. Why dark like a rain cloud?
It's a beautiful poetic image. The dark, cooling color of a cloud that's full of rain suggests the Lord's ability to extinguish the heat or the fire of material suffering and anxiety for his devotees. It's a color associated with deep peace and satisfaction.
That's lovely. And then every specific mark and ornament seems designed as a focal point for the meditating mind. There's the Shuvatsa mark on the chest, which is the specific place where Lekam, the goddess of fortune, resides, signifying spiritual prosperity and auspiciousness.
And he holds the traditional divine armaments or symbols. The conch shell, representing primordial sound, the disc or Sudarshana chakra, representing time, the wheel of dharma, and a weapon against illusion, the mace, representing mental and physical strength, the power to subdue ego, and the lotus flower, representing beauty, purity, detachment, creation. Plus, he wears a garland of forest flowers, the Vanamala.
The Vanamala. Why forest flowers?
It often symbolizes his connection to nature, his simple pastoral beauty, his relationship with devotees in the natural setting of Vrindavan, and the beauty of the unadorned natural creation itself.
Okay, and the description goes right down to the feet. Adorned with tinkling anklets, nupurai, radiating the light of the Kaustuba gem worn on his chest. The entire form is described as beautiful in every limb, wearing a shining crown, elegant bracelets, a waist belt, and armlets.
It's a complete picture, designed to captivate the mind. And the final touch emphasizes the personal connection. A gracious face and a sweet, merciful glance. Prasada Samukha Kim. This comprehensive, incredibly beautiful visualization becomes the stable anchor for the yogi's mind. It ensures that the concentration isn't dry or abstract, but deeply focused on the living object of their purified devotion.
All right, so that incredibly detailed visualization of the auspicious form, the dhyana magalam, that's the anchor. But the meditation process itself isn't static. It's described as a dynamic ascent. Once that form is clearly established in the mind, the next step is to actively draw the mind inward and upward, using the intellect as the guide.
That's right. The instruction is to meditate on this extremely delicate form, Sukumaram, emphasizing its subtle, spiritual nature, fixing the mind steadily on all the limbs, Sarvago, concentrating on each part, perhaps moving the focus systematically. But control is absolutely essential here, which brings us back to that famous philosophical analogy that comes up again and again.
The chariot analogy for mental control. We have to actively draw the senses away from their objects, using the mind itself. The mind acts like the reins, pulling the horses, the senses back from running wild towards the external world.
Exactly. And then you use the intellect, the buddhi, acting as the charioteer, Sardathina, to firmly direct that now controlled mind entirely towards the supreme, Mei Sarvata. The intellect's role here isn't to analyze the form or philosophize about it, but to act as the unwavering guide, the driver, ensuring the mind's focus remains absolutely fixed on that visualized divine form.
Okay, so once that deep, guided focus is achieved, the text then details the precise mental ascent that needs to follow. This seems to be the stage of final release, letting go of even the meditational framework itself.
It is. The practitioner first draws the all-pervading mind, Tatsarva Yapaka Chitta, that same mind which usually wanders everywhere, touching everything and concentrates it, fixes it intensely in just one place on the visualized form. The specific instruction given here is to focus on the sweet smiling face, Susmita Mukham.
The face. Why the face specifically, after meditating on the whole form?
The face is often considered the culmination of the Lord's beauty, the seat of expression, grace, and mercy, Prasada. Focusing there represents the height of devotional absorption in the personal aspect. It's the final point of loving devotional focus on the form itself.
But the ascent continues even beyond the face, right? What happens next?
Yes. The stabilized mind is then drawn back even from that beautiful face. It's withdrawn from the specific features of the form and fixed instead in the Vyomni.
Vyomni. What's that?
It means the ether, or the empty space, usually visualized within the region of the heart. This signifies transcending the specific physical characteristics of the visualization altogether. The sense of divine presence, the light, might be retained, but the particular form is allowed to dissolve, generalized into a pure field of conscious awareness, luminous space.
Okay, letting go of the form itself. And then comes what seems like the truly challenging final instruction, the complete abandonment.
Yes, the yogi must then abandon even that final subtle visualization, that concentration on the luminous ether within. They have to let go of that focus point too. The instruction is to ascend to the supreme manoha, literally my ascent or ascending to me, and at that point think of nothing else whatsoever. Na kinchi api sentayet.
Think of nothing, not even the meditation process, not even the feeling of merging.
Nothing. All remaining cognitive activity, all subtle forms, all names, even the awareness of oneself as the meditator who is merging all of it must be released for the final, total absorption to occur. This is the ultimate point where Ekamuhyata, that single, non-dual conclusion Uddhava asked about, is fully realized.
And what is the final state, the final realization that's attained in this condition of complete absorption?
With the mind fully absorbed and stabilized, Samahita Matiya, the yogi achieves the ultimate unified vision. They see the individual self, Atman, within the Supreme Self, and they see the Supreme Self within their own self. The realization dawns that the individual self is in reality the soul of all, Sarvatman, eternally united with the light of all lights, Jyotiryotta Saitam. The small light of individual consciousness recognizes its inherent eternal unity with the infinite original source light.
Wow. And the practical result, the outcome of achieving this intense, focused state of meditation, what happens to the yogi's mind?
The text states that through this intense meditation, this Suttivya Kratyana, the yogi's mind very quickly renounces the fundamental illusion, the Brahma, that keeps us bound to the material world.
And that illusion, that Brahma, is specifically defined as being born from three things, right?
Yes, the renunciation is defined across the three main categories of material entanglement. The yogi renounces the illusion born of drabya, meaning attachment to material possessions, wealth, physical objects, the body itself. They renounce the illusion born of jnana, which here means mere theoretical knowledge, dry philosophical speculation that hasn't ripened into direct realization. And they renounce the illusion born of kriya attachment to ritual activities, worldly duties performed for results, the whole cycle of karma.
So dravya, jhana, kriya. Possessions, theoretical knowledge, and action-reaction. Those three basically represent the entire mechanism of material entanglement and illusion.
Pretty much. And by fully renouncing the deep-seated illusion rooted in these three, the yogi quickly attains final liberation, nirvata.
Nirvaka, the ultimate freedom. Freedom from those sorrow-filled, karma-vinirmita worlds, those temporary results of action we discussed right at the beginning.
Exactly. The complete cessation of the cycle driven by temporary goals and illusory understanding. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. What an absolutely exhaustive journey through these source texts today. We started right back with Uddhava's fundamental question. Why so many paths? Why the confusion? And we found that the spiritual diversity that Vikalpa Pradhanyamat isn't really due to a flawed original message.
No, it's more like the message gets refracted through the different modes of nature, goodness, passion, ignorance that color the understanding of all the different types of recipients.
And we saw how that complexity gets resolved by the text's assertion of the supremacy of bhakti. We contrasted all those other paths reliant on action, knowledge, austerity, which, the text argues, ultimately produce only adyanavatar results, things that begin and end, often in sorrow.
Whereas intense, unattached devotion, that Urjita Bhaktya, is presented as providing a completely independent joy, a protection even for the imperfect practitioner, a force that cleanses the heart and leads directly towards that single unified conclusion, the ekamukhya, the ultimate absorption.
And then we follow those incredibly detailed practical steps of dhyana yoga, moving from the mental preparation, the pranayama breath control with Om,
to that meticulous visualization of the auspicious form, the Tiyaramagalam, which acts as the essential spiritual anchor for the mind.
before finally letting go of even that form, abandoning all concepts to merge with the light of all lights. So the tool of dhyana yoga is shown as the necessary method to focus the mind, but only after that mind has already been purified and motivated by the love of bhakti.
I think the real key takeaway, the most revolutionary idea here, is that extraordinary inversion of the usual spiritual hierarchy. The idea that detachment, Nirupaka, isn't some grim duty you force upon yourself, but the natural, almost effortless result of experiencing truly blissful devotion. And perhaps even more startling, the idea that the divine values this pure, unattached devotion so highly, more highly than cosmic status, power, or even other divine relationships, that he claims he personally follows the unattached devotee, just hoping to be purified by the dust of their feet.
It completely changes the perspective. So our final thought for you to consider is this. If the highest spiritual goal presented here isn't acquiring wealth or cosmic power, or even achieving traditional liberation from suffering, but instead it's the intensity and purity of the loving relationship itself, an attachment so profound it actually inspires reciprocal affection and purification from the divine, then maybe ask yourself, what's just one small practical step you could take today, right now, to begin replacing any sense of conditional effort in your spiritual life with a focus on developing truly unconditional affection?
Just something to think about.
Absolutely. Mull that over until our next deep dive.